Because I had just recently been employed for a couple of weeks as a police officer, I was riding with a seasoned officer, Larry Benoit. The four officers I just described went into there to effect an arrest. Larry Benoit and I stayed on the outside where we could monitor the door in case there were problems that developed. To my understanding, Mr. Holmes at that time, who is his uncle, was seated at the bar with a 38 or 357 revolver, 6-shot revolver in his waistband. As they got closer to the door, Mr. Farragut started to resist. The officers were subduing him, and Mr. Holmes got off of the bar stool he was sitting on, got in a crouch position, and fired indiscriminately into the officers. As things would turn out, his nephew was killed by one of the bullets that he shot. And in particular, that bullet went through the wrist of Larry Benoit, and then it penetrated Mr. Farragut's skull, and then it lodged into the sinus of Mr. Benoit. But for that, Mr. Benoit would be dead. He would have had a shot to the head. Buddy Sandoval received a shot to the shoulder. He was paralyzed, and it pretty much ended his career. The man who suffered the most tragic injury was Keith Chassa. He was shot in the back and paralyzed for the rest of his life until he died on March 10th of 2008 and was honored as a line of duty death by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial.
We just heard from the sheriff of Lafourche Parish, who was a rookie at the time that this crime happened 44 years ago. Now, we're about to watch the parole hearing of this man who really just seems without reason started to fire into the crowd, killing his own nephew and brutally wounding multiple police officers. I'll unpack it with many details at the end.
Our first remote location this morning is at Elaine Hunt Correctional Center. Good morning, Warden Bickham. Would you and your staff please introduce yourself for the record?
I will. Good morning, board. It's me, Warden Dusty Bickham.
Chris Blanc, classification.
Joe Buttress, Assistant Warden. Terry Grady, Director of Medical and Mental Health Services. That's it.
Thank you. All right, before we turn it over to Mr. Holmes, let me just read some information into the record. I didn't do that at the onset. Mr. Holmes is classified as a first felony offender. He is currently, as his attorney said, serving a 100-year sentence, having been sentenced in Lafourche Parish on April 23rd, 1981 for 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder. His parole eligibility date was June 28, 2013. He does have a good time release date. That's a mandatory release date, and that date is April 29, 2031. Thank you. So, Ms. Hemingway, we would like to hear from Mr. Holmes why he believes we should grant favorably to.
So they want to know, so you need to tell them why you think that you should be listening today.
Oh. Why? Okay. I was in the club and go to the bathroom and I'll come back and someone told me, said my little nephew was getting beat up and getting killed on the club. I really didn't know what was happening, you understand what I'm talking about? But until I came in and I saw what I saw, and then they were beating him up with a nice stick and all that. So I came to the aid and did what I did, but I'm very sorry for what I did, inside the club. I was very sorry, very remorseful for what I'd done. As a result, it was Mardi Gras and I was drinking.
But tell them why you should be released today. They want to know why you should be released today. Why do you think you should be released today? That's what they want to hear.
Why I did.
Why should you be released today?
Why you should be granted parole?
I should be granted parole. Well, I'm gonna say it like this. For what I did, I feel like, I was wrong for what I did, but I played myself. I played myself before the board this morning, to forgive me what I've done and to give me another chance to be, to get out there and be with my family and to be with my family, my loved ones, because I had been away from a long time, and I got a daughter right now. She's on that first stage cancer, and she really needs me. It's not so much about my family, but I'm thinking about the family of the other people as well, because it really hurt me, and I made a mistake during my younger years, and I'm very sorry, very remorseful for what I've done, and I'm not trying to justify myself right when I'm wrong, and I just place myself upon the mercy of the Lord to give me another chance to be home with my family. And I'm very sorry, remorseful for it, and I take full responsibility of everything what I made a mistake and done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Warden Bickham, is there anything you could share with us about Mr. Holmes?
Good morning. Not really, I've only been here a few weeks. I hadn't been gotten familiar with him, so the records has to speak for itself.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. So now we'll hear from the folks who want to speak in support. Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project.
Good morning, Board. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. We supported Mr. Holmes at his last hearing, and we continue to support him. Mr. Holmes has served now 44 years for a crime, obviously, that was extremely serious. And is actually his outstanding record during incarceration to grant his parole today.
All right, thank you. And I don't have an indication. Does Mr. Holmes' son wish to say a few words?
Yes. You know, and I asked him a question because for a long time, for a very, very long time, and it's probably hard to say, but I'm gonna be honest, I kind of hated my father for that, for the things that he done to my family, not just my family, but the officer family, his daughter, his wife, and we sat down and we talked. And he said, son, he said, if I can do it all again, I would change a lot of things that I've done in that time. I said, so, you know, over the years, I watched his growth, you know, the programs that he was in and things that he done, you know, and even much when I come to this facility, I see the growth with him, with interacting with the officers here, you know, and so I'm just here in the support of my father and hopefully the family. I know it's tough for him. I know how hard it is because I lost my mother a few months ago, so I know how hard it is for the daughter and the wife and their family. So my heart goes out to them, you know. But I mean, I thank God for the board. Thank God for each one of these people here. These two ladies here. That's pretty much all I have.
All right, well, we appreciate your input. Thank you so much. We'll move on and hear from the opposition now. Sheriff, could we hear from you first?
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the board. Thank you. My name is Craig Weber. I am the Sheriff of Lafourche Parish. I've been serving in this capacity since 1992. With respect to this particular hearing, I was a young police officer. I was 18 years old on February 19th, 1980, which was a Tuesday, and it was a Tuesday of Mardi Gras. Mr. Holmes, among several hundred other people, were gathered at a lounge called the Godfather of Soul, which no longer exists. It was located at 10th and Narrow Street in the city of Thibodaux. It was about 10:30 that night, and this particular building, the entrance to the building had a single door in the middle of the building. It was a rectangular shaped building, long and narrow. And when you entered into the front door, the entire right side of the building had a bar that kind of went from front to back. And then the left side was where patrons would gather and dance and what have you, and the restrooms were in the back. The officers received a call of domestic violence. Mr. Holmes alluded to his nephew. His nephew's name was Wilmer Farragut. Mr. Farragut had committed a battery upon a woman he was seeing at the time. He then went into the lounge, to the back of the lounge. Several officers responded. Wayne Day, responded, Buddy Santamon responded, Keith Chasson responded, and the shift supervisor that night, Ronald Benoit, responded. Because I had just recently been employed for a couple of weeks as a police officer, I was riding with a seasoned officer, Larry Benoit. The four officers I just described went into there to effect an arrest. Larry Benoit and I stayed on the outside where we could monitor the door in case there were problems that developed. They located Mr. Farragut. They took him into custody, and the four officers were escorting him out to the front of the building from the rear of the building. To my understanding, Mr. Holmes at that time, who is his uncle, was seated at the bar with a 38 or 357 revolver, 6-shot revolver in his waistband. As they got closer to the door, Mr. Farragut started to resist. The officers were subduing him, and Mr. Holmes got off of the bar stool he was sitting on, got in a crouch position, and fired indiscriminately into the officers. As things would turn out, his nephew was killed by one of the bullets that he shot. And in particular, that bullet went through the wrist of Larry Benoit, and then it penetrated Mr. Farragut's skull, and then it lodged into the sinus of Mr. Benoit. But for that, Mr. Benoit would be dead. He would have had a shot to the head. Buddy Santamon received a shot to the shoulder. He was paralyzed, and it pretty much ended his career. The man who suffered the most tragic injury was Keith Chasson. He was shot in the back and paralyzed for the rest of his life until he died on March 10th of 2008 and was honored as a line of duty death by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. I, as an officer, was approaching the building in an attempt to see if we could assist, and there was total pandemonium, as you can imagine. I remember seeing the muzzle flash of the gun from throughout the door. Larry took cover on the side of the car, and Wayne was able to escape. As Mr. Holmes exited, we initiated gunfire. He was injured and subsequently taken to the hospital and recovered. I want to commend him on the things that he's accomplished in prison. It's certainly noteworthy. I also want to offer to him that in terms of forgiveness can be given, but forgiveness does not equate to release. I believe that his sentence was a just sentence. I mentioned that, but for the fact that that bullet went through his nephew's head, and I don't know why at the time, I didn't take the time to research it, he was not prosecuted for the murder of his nephew because he was certainly responsible for it. Ronald Benoit would have died, and he would have faced a first-degree murder of a police officer, and in all likelihood been sentenced to death with the other two officers who had those serious injuries. Captain Chasson, he retired as a captain, was a remarkable individual. He never let his injuries get in the way of his commitment to the citizens of Thibodeau, but he was a young man. He was just starting his career. I think he was 23 maybe when he got injured and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. So I would like to offer that this was an ambush on police officers. Mr. Holmes was not being arrested. The officers had no interaction with him whatsoever. He made a decision, an irrevocable decision, to ambush and murder police officers. He almost succeeded, but didn't quite succeed. But I don't think just the good fortune of having people not die should mitigate the fact that this crime was so serious that it's one that I believe that demands that he spend his sentence there. I know he's talked about the things that he's missed with his family, and that's certainly a difficult thing for any human being. But I look at the families of those officers who are all now deceased. Every one of them are now deceased. And I don't think, too, that just because Mr. Holmes outlived the victims of his crime should mitigate against the lessening of his sentence and his release. Thank you for the opportunity, and I respectfully request that despite the things that Mr. Holmes has accomplished and can continue to accomplish, because he has the benefit of life, he has the benefit of knowing his family and getting up in the morning and breathing air that they don't have. I would ask that he be given his sentence be I oppose his release, and that he serve out the sentence that he was given by the court.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. We appreciate it. I'm going to just go in the order that I have you on my list, if you don't mind, for those of you who are here that want to speak. First, I have Linda Roberts. All right, Mr. Holmes's case has been assigned to Mr. Byron. He'll take the lead on questions.
Well, let me thank Sheriff Weber for doing such an excellent job of explaining the case. I don't have to say anything about that part of it. I do need to note that there is extreme law enforcement opposition and victim opposition in this case, both current and over the years for the prior investigations. My question for you, Mr. Holmes, is seems like it. Why did you shoot the officers? What were you thinking? The guy was just being arrested for a misdemeanor. What caused that? What caused you to do what you did that night?
I guess to drinking and, and doing the Mardi Gras of that time, I just, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to do, but to drinking and stuff like that. And one of the police, I didn't really know if all of the police they had on pinky clothes back. And I didn't know what's what. It wasn't a civilian clothes.
So did you tell him to let him go or anything like that, or you just started shooting at him without saying a word?
Well, during that time when somebody had came in and told me about what's going on in the club like that, my nephew was getting killed and things like that. I just went out of my mind. And I'm very sorry for that. Very sorry, very remorseful for that. As a result of drinking and getting high. I'm sorry. And I just pray that y'all just, I played myself on the race to the board. Give me another chance because it won't happen again. Nothing like that will never happen again because throughout all those self-help programs, and since I've been incarcerated 44 years, I've learned a lot. I learned to discipline myself. And I just pray that I get another chance back to society to see my family and have them. And I'm very sorry for what had happened to the family of these officers were involved. And I'm very sorry because I made mistakes, but I'm fully responsible for my actions. And I just place myself upon the mercy to give me another chance. And it won't ever happen again. I promise, never happen again. None of that. It's just through drinking, having fun, and it happens.
All right. That's all the question I had.
All right,
I just got one question.
Mr. Freeman.
What is the charge in 1971 about first degree murder reduced to manslaughter?
Oh, everything was out.
What did they say?
I didn't have to go to court no time on that.
They want to know what happened though with that. What was that charge about?
Hmm?
They want to know why you had that charge in 1970. Like what happened for you to get that charge?
Oh, that happened in the club, Hay-Bell Ball.
Was a gun involved in that incident?
And I went to the bathroom to take a leak and then he just must have had something against me. I went fishing and then after that in my boat, And, so he wanted some fishing. I told him my sister had a ballroom, had a club. And she was sitting, I didn't have none, I didn't catch anything, no fish at all. I had fish, but it was something that I bought from somebody out there while I was out there. But that was it on that. Then he pulled out his revolver and he shot me. And I shot back. He shot me in my arm.
And maybe Gordon, you can help with this, or I see Mr. Holmes has been in and out of the hospital for the past, what, 3 years?
DJ, you got anything?
Yes, ma'am. What about it, Ms. Renaz? Anything in particular that you're curious about? He does have a longer list of medical conditions. I mean, they are all currently stable right now.
That's
He
right.
wouldn't be someone that we would look at as a compassionate release or medical parole or anything like that at this time.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. I appreciate it. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think that the panel is prepared to vote unless Ms. Hemingway, is there anything you'd like to say to close it out?
No, if I can, Ms. Renata, I'd just like to clarify some things if I could right quick.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And really it's just based on Mr. Holmes' kind of limited our ability to articulate some of the things that he's done. And it's likely based on his age and just his cognitive ability at this age. And so I would like to, I know Ms. Hemingway produced a brief that provides this information, but I would like to just before the board to talk about some of the things that Mr. Holmes has done over the 44 years, his intense dedication to his faith and the humbling experience it was transforming himself to a man of God, both learning and understanding and truly feeling the great harm that he caused to the officers, their families, his own family, and his community. As he's been able to talk about, alcohol played a huge role in just the demise of his life while he was not, before he came to prison. And the brief will show you over 15 years of AA and substance abuse. Also over 20 classes that address behavior management, changing his way of thinking. So it changes his actions, which ultimately change one's life through behavior, right? And his dedication to others through hospice volunteering, the Catholic Men's Fellowship, and the Lifers Association. So today we're merely asking the committee to evaluate the now 76-year-old Joseph Holmes based on whether or not he poses a risk to public safety if he serves the remainder of his sentence on parole. As the sentence does not go away, but rather he's under the control of the Department of Probation and Parole for the remainder of his life. Obviously, he's not going to make it to 100 years. And so just based on his rehabilitation, his age, his remorse, and provided that he no longer poses a threat to society, we just pray that the board would allow him to serve the remainder of his sentence on parole. With any conditions the board deems necessary, obviously, he's not planning to return to that community. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Byron.
All right, Mr. Holmes, today I'm gonna vote to deny you parole due to the seriousness and nature of the crime where 3 police officers were shot and another person was murdered, and also based on the strong law enforcement and victim opposition.
Mr. Tillett.
Mr. Holmes, it seems like you've made a change in your life, and I congratulate you for that. But because of the seriousness of this situation and the strong opposition, I hope that you continue to better yourself while you're incarcerated. My vote today is going to be to deny.
Is this legit? Mr. Holmes, I'm a little surprised that you were not charged with your nephew's murder. And, you know, if you take that into consideration, your sentence would have been even more severe. My vote is to deny. I don't want to lessen the fact that you've done a good job
while incarcerated, and hope you continue along that track. But many times when someone takes the life of another person, it's in a conflict. You had no dog in the fight, and you shot into a group of officers, and that's a very serious crime.
Mr. Freeman.
Okay, I concur. I deny based on law enforcement, victim opposition, and definitely the nature of offense. I'm just not getting into it, but that was very heinous. So my vote is to deny.
All right, so Mr. Holmes, I want to commend you for your hospice volunteer work. I know that's very difficult. And you do have, I do believe you're sorry for what happened. You do have a good prison record, but based on, but you do have an out date. Yeah, I got a good time release date. And so based on the opposition that's been expressed here today, and the fact that you do have a mandatory release date in 2031, my vote today is to deny you. So today, sir, your parole's been denied by unanimous vote. Good luck to you.
This is when he was denied back in 2013. So local law enforcement officials and family members watched Tuesday as parole was denied for a man who was sent to prison for shooting 3 officers in 1980. Joseph Holmes serving 99 years in state prison for 3 counts of attempted murder for the shooting of Captain Keith, Ronald Benoit, and Buddy St. Amant. And he kills someone. So you shoot. He was shot in the spine. The bullet paralyzed him from the waist down, and complications from the injury ultimately led to his death in 2008. Monday, Holmes was the first parole hearing since his death. It was very heartbreaking because this is the first time that I've been to one of the hearings without my brother present. It was harder, but we also wanted to make sure that we represented my brother, and well, that would be denied his request. The 5-person parole board unanimously denied Holmes' request to be freed. There was no parole for my father. There was no change in what happened that night, said the victim's daughter. Holmes couldn't take back his actions, and we are very glad that way it turned out. About 10:30 p.m. Mardi Gras night, 1980, the 3 officers were called to the now demolished Godfather of Soul Bar near Narrow Street for a DV abuse complaint. The officers met with a distressed woman outside the bar and took statements from a witness. They went into the bar to apprehend Wilmore Farragut for allegedly pushing the woman from a bar stool. Sheriff Craig Weber, who was a rookie officer at the time, was called in as backup and was sitting outside the bar when the melee broke loose. Of course, that's who we just heard leave a very strong statement. Craig said that the officers brought Farragut towards the door. Holmes stood up from the bar and began shooting his .357 revolver at the officers. 1 bullet struck the head. Farragut, who was Holmes' nephew, and he died on the scene. As Holmes neared the door of the bar, Weber and the other officers opened fire. They hit Holmes multiple times, but he fled the scene and was found and arrested shortly after. Benoit took 4 bullets, according to family. St. Amant suffered partial paralysis to his shoulder, and the officer was down and never got up under his own power again. 23-year-old Chason, who had agreed to work overtime that night because of the holiday, was now paralyzed. I made sure I would be there personally to impress the parole board that people die off. Their voices have been silenced by the grave, said Craig. But it is important that the parole board members see the commitment of his family and law enforcement. Craig spoke to the board, and other officers, police department attended as well. Another 300 people wrote letters to the board urging it to deny the request. I was very proud that they showed their support like they did. Keith's widow, Debbie, the panel said it was the most opposition they had seen to a parole request. Though Keith was confined to a wheelchair, he continued to work in the records division of the department, moving up the ranks to captain. He worked as the police department until he died in 2008. Given that the injuries he sustained contributed to his death at age 51, he's memorialized in Washington, D.C. as an officer killed in the line of duty. It's pretty intense, pretty insane. Again, I think it blows one mind, as Mr. Ledoux said, that he wasn't prosecuted for killing his own nephew. You find out here that he had actually killed another man previously. It's weird. The DA just dropped the ball on this, and it's hard to understand that, being that 3 police officers were shot, 2 were paralyzed, and a man was killed, and he's not. And I guess I don't even understand why he has a parole eligibility. Judges messed up. I don't even think this is an Act 122 thing that he has parole eligibility, because that first parole hearing came in, what year is it? In 2008. Act 122 only came out like 5 years ago or something. So I don't understand. But because some lazy DA, really lazy DA or lazy judge, it then affects the victims' lives for decades, because they have to go through this, and that's just madness. But here you see it laziness prevails. And this is not like legislation. I think this is pure laziness. They offered a deal. They didn't go to trial. It doesn't make sense. You don't really see this often with police officers. They like to throw the book. But in this case, they for some reason didn't. And I guess if we can learn from this is that sometimes injustice is a full opportunity provider, whether you're a police officer or a child. It happens to everyone, more so to children, but also to police themselves. And thank you, Sir Richard, for the info. And one last thing, if you noticed how our favorite warden is now in this prison, not in this prison, but serving this prison, it's because of a scandal. So DOC removes Eline Hunt Correctional Center warden. So the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections has placed Eline Hunt Correctional Center head warden Donnie Bertolin on suspension pending the investigation. The department relieved him of official duties as head warden of Hunt effective immediately. And according to the press release from DOC, the above actions were taken due to concerns of his oversight of the prison, including investigation of alleged inappropriate use of force incident over the weekend. The department is also placed on suspension pending investigation of correctional officer. Part of this, Dixon Correctional Institute warden Edward Dusty Bickham will serve as interim on-site head warden in Eline Hunt Correctional Center. So I think he is viewed, Dusty is viewed internally as the crack warden. The idea that they bring him in to solve what seems to be a problem that the press has picked up on and things like that at this prison. And Dusty is, I do think he's a special warden. You can tell he cares. He knows his inmates like well. He doesn't need to go through the record books usually. He's like, he off the cusp understands them. You can see he builds relationships and real rapport, and they respect. There's mutual respect, and when they get granted, he's genuinely very happy for them. And so nice to see that he's still working, because we've missed him a while at his old post. And thank you, Sir Richard, for calling that out. And now with that, I will let you go.
Forgiveness can be given, but forgiveness does not equate to release. I believe that his sentence was a just sentence. I mentioned that, but for the fact that that bullet went through his nephew's head, and I don't know why at the time, I didn't take the time to research it. He was not prosecuted for the murder of his nephew, because he was certainly responsible for it. Ronald Benoit would have died, and he would have faced a first-degree murder of a police officer, and in all likelihood been sentenced to death with the other 2 officers who had those serious injuries. Captain Chasson, he retired as a captain, was a remarkable individual. He never let his injuries get in the way of his commitment to the citizens of Thibodeau, but he was a young man. He was just starting his career. I think he was 23 maybe when he got injured, and was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life.